the best thing that happened today was the Sally Yates hearing. And I say that not so much because it was anything, a great revelation. There was no great revelation. I mean, there was nothing really new or substantive that came out of it. One of the things that came out of it that may have seemed substantive was the fact that she definitively stated that the actions of Michael Flynn were problematic. And actually, there's a quote here. She said, "We believe that General Flynn was compromised with respect to the Russians. To state the obvious, you don't want your national security advisor compromised by the Russians." This was a definitive statement, something that we all somewhat assumed and concluded prior to this. But to hear her say that at a hearing and to hear congressmen or senators on both sides of the aisle agree with that really speaks volumes about how problematic General Michael Flynn was, and how problematic it was for the Trump administration to put him in office, even though she had already warned them, even though President Obama warned them. This came out today. President Obama warned him against hiring General Flynn, but Donald Trump still put him in office. So that was really the only substantive thing that came out of it. It was good to see the sparring, and actually that's what I want to focus on, how she utterly devastated, embarrassed the hell out of Senator Cornyn and out of Senator Ted Cruz. That was a fascinating look. But before I get into the fun parts of this, I just want to hit a couple of other things that were covered. So again, before the testimony today, Obama, it was leaked that President Obama directly and personally told Trump that Flynn was a concern. Donald Trump hired Flynn anyway. The timeline is very troubling in the sense that it took 18 days from the time that Sally Yates informed the White House counsel that there was a problem with the statements that were being made by Vice President Pence, and that she believed that Vice President Pence was acting in good faith, but was acting on information that was incorrect and was given to him incorrectly, or he was lied to. Mike Pence was lied to, and she brought this information to the White House counsel, and it took 18 days for them to decide to let go of Flynn. Now, I actually want to correct myself. It wasn't even the fact that it took so long to fire General Flynn. It was the fact that it took a Washington Post leak to fire General Flynn. And this is the problem, right? The question is, how long would Donald Trump have allowed someone who he knows is compromised to be the national security advisor? That's the big pressing question. It's not a question that's going to get Donald Trump impeached, right? I want to make sure we put the proper expectations on this conversation. Some people are using this to suggest that Donald Trump is going to be impeached, that this is going to be some type of change in the administration. No, it really has nothing to do with the future of the Trump administration outside of the realm of how responsible is this administration? Can they be trusted with confidential information? Can they be trusted to hire people who can be trusted? And it looks as though they cannot be. And so it took the Washington Post leak to actually get General Flynn fired at 18 days after Sally Yates put the information or gave the information to the White House General Counsel. Here's another facet of what happened today, and this is what you see in any time you hear a senatorial or congressional investigative hearing. You see politicians asking questions to push their narrative or to deflect from the other party's narrative. So today was no different. The Republican Party tried to put the emphasis on Hillary Clinton's emails. They tried to put the emphasis on anything except for the fact that Donald Trump needs to be held accountable and needs to give some type of statement on his neglect in hiring General Flynn, despite President Obama's warnings and despite Sally Yates warning him that General Flynn had been compromised. That's really the scope of this conversation. Now, the Republicans did try to deflect from that with Hillary Clinton's emails. They also tried to deflect and discuss the Sally Yates refusal to defend Donald Trump's executive order on the Muslim ban. We'll call it the Muslim ban for now, for lack of a better, more accurate phrase. And this is where the best moments of today's hearing came. Two people, Senator Cornyn and Senator Cruz, Ted Cruz, thought that they were going to drill Sally Yates on her decision to not defend this executive order. I want to play the first exchange. The first exchange is Senator Cornyn asking the question, and you would think that after Sally Yates got done with Senator Cornyn, that Ted Cruz would get a clue, but he didn't. So let's watch Senator Cornyn's exchange first.
I voted for your confirmation because I believe that you had a distinguished career, but I have to tell you that I find it enormously disappointing that you somehow vetoed the decision of the Office of Legal Counsel with regard to the lawfulness of the President's order and decided instead that you would countermand the executive order of the President of the United States because you happen to disagree with it as a policy matter.
Well, it wasn't.
I just have to say that.
I appreciate that, Senator. And let me make one thing clear. It was not purely as a policy matter. And in fact, I remember my confirmation hearing in an exchange that I had with you and others of your colleagues where you specifically asked me in that hearing that if the President asked me to do something that was unlawful or unconstitutional, and one of your colleagues said, or even just that would reflect poorly on the Department of Justice, would I say no? And I looked at this, I made a determination that I believed that it was unlawful. I also thought that it was inconsistent with the principles of the Department of Justice, and I said no, and that's what I promised you I would do, and that's what I did.
Oh man, Sally Yates, ladies, listen, I don't know if you caught what she did there, but what she did was so beautiful. They asked, when she was being confirmed, would she tell the sitting president at the time, would she tell him no? Because they believed that President Obama, who was the sitting president at the time, would potentially ask something that would be unconstitutional, not befitting of the White House, or not becoming of the customs and the norms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They drilled that question. They asked this question every single time they confirmed somebody for the Department of Justice, because they understand the Department of Justice, although answerable to the executive branch, has to be able to operate independently. So they at sundry times have to be able to tell the president no. And then they tried to come and say, well, Sally Yates, what gives you the right to tell the president no in this regard? And said, you know, I'm disappointed. You know, I thought you were a good candidate. That's why I voted for your confirmation, blah, blah, blah. And Sally Yates says, hold on. At the confirmation hearing that you're trying to pull rank on, you asked me if I would tell the sitting president no. It just so happens that the sitting president now is a part of your party, and you don't want me to tell them no. You want me to sign off on everything. So if you're not being consistent here, Senator Cornyn, and she did it, you know, without all the flair. She just did it with poise, grace, and fierceness, and really schooled him, exposing the hypocrisy that they wanted her to say no to President Trump, to President Obama rather, but they did not want her to say no to their president, their Republican president, President Trump. It does not work like that. You would think anyone else who came after that would understand that's not somewhere you want to go. But unfortunately, or actually, no, fortunately for us, Ted Cruz did not get the memo. Here's his exchange with her.
I would note on January 27th, 2017, the Department of Justice issued an official legal decision, a determination by the Office of Legal Counsel, that the executive order, and I'll quote from the opinion, the proposed order is approved with respect to form and legality. That's a determination from OLC on January 27th that it was legal. 3 days later, you determined, using your own words, that although OLC had opined on legality, it had not addressed whether it was, quote, wise or just.
And I also, in that same directive, Senator, said that I was not convinced it was lawful.
Right.
I also made the point that the Office of OLC looks purely at the face of the document, and again, makes a determination as to whether there is some set of circumstances under which some portion of that.
All right, I wanted to cut it there just in case for the Facebook stream. Facebook is kind of draconian, but here's the substance of it. She said, Ted Cruz is saying you're trying to override the White House decision. You're trying to override the legal review of it, and she's trying to let him know, listen, what this organization does when they review this executive order, they look at the form, they look at the structure, and they look at the general legality of it. But what they don't do is they don't pull in any external information and review it from a broader legal sense. And her job as the acting attorney general was to do exactly that, to look at the intent And when she looks at the intent of the president and she looks at the execution of this executive order, she made the call that she was in the position to make. And again, it goes one step further. He still did not learn his lesson. Here's the final exchange that honestly sent he and Cornyn running. They left after this exchange. Here it is.
In the over 200 years of the Department of Justice history, are you aware of any instance in which the Department of Justice has formally approved the legality of a policy and 3 days later the Attorney General has directed the department not to follow that policy and to defy that policy?
I'm not, but I'm also not aware of a situation where the Office of Legal Counsel was advised not to tell the Attorney General about it until after it was over.
Sally Yates, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, this was the highlight of the exchange. Ted Cruz thought he was going to get her twice, and twice she let Ted Cruz. And just in case you missed the substance of it, the Office of Legal Counsel was advised not to discuss this with the acting Attorney General, Sally Yates. And so he's trying to pull rank with one arcane statute, and she brought up this and really just nailed him to the floor so badly that both he and Cornyn left. That was the highlight of today's exchange, and I think that's the most substantive takeaway. The most substantive takeaway is don't mess with Sally Yates because you're not ready.